Everyone knows Roy Keane is an absolute nutter. He scrapped with his own manager, smashed the records for red cards, and tried to break Erling Haaland's dad's leg, and that is just the tame stuff. In a wild 20-year career, the unhinged Irishman made his Premier League debut hungover, unleashed kung fu kicks in the dressing room, stamped on Gareth Southgate like a measly cockroach, terrorised his neighbours with a kitchen knife, headbutted Peter Schmeichel, his own goalkeeper, threatened to shove the World Cup up his manager's arse, and strangled comedians who dared to mock him. This is the story of the Premier League's most notorious hothead. Even when he was a bright-eyed teenager, you wouldn't want to mess with Roy Keane. Before he became football's greatest hardman, Roy was an amateur boxer in his native Cork. Keane laid down his gloves to pick up a football, but he never lost his thirst for violence. In 1990, Roy is snapped up by Brian Clough's Nottingham Forest. He's only 19, but that doesn't stop Cloughy handing him a surprise debut against reigning league champions Liverpool. There's just one problem. Roy played a reserve game the day before and was out on the piss with his teammates until 2 a.m, but he doesn't let a hangover stop him. 5 minutes into the match, Roy stamps on Liverpool's star man John Barnes and screams "fuck off" in his face. Needless to say, Brian Clough absolutely loves it. But the honeymoon doesn't last long. During an FA Cup tie against Crystal Palace, Keane passes back to his goalkeeper and gives away a cheap goal. In the dressing room at the end of the game, Clough decides to teach him a lesson by punching Roy hard in the chest. As Keane lays winded on the floor, Clough looks him in the eye and barks, "Don't you pass the ball back to my goalkeeper, young man." Roy learns his lesson and even signs a new contract in 1992. But his demands for higher wages lead Clough to brand him a greedy boy. Forest are relegated that season, so Keane agrees to join Kelly Dalglish's Blackburn. At least, they thought he did. Roy and Kenny agree terms on a sunny Friday afternoon in July. But when the gaffer calls Ewood Park to get a contract sent through, everyone's already clocked off and gone to the pub. The pair agree to meet again on Monday morning to sign the contract, but over the weekend, Sir Alex Ferguson intervenes and convinces Roy to join Manchester United. When Roy explains he's already shaken Dalglish's hand, Fergie replies, "Oh, don't worry about that." Roy jumps on the next flight to Manchester and signs for a British record £3.75 million before heading off to Cyprus on his holidays. When Dalglish finds out, he hits the roof. "You're a wee bastard and you won't get away with this." He threatens to hunt Roy down in Ayia Napa, and Roy spends his entire holiday nervously sipping ouzo, looking over his shoulder in case Kenny storms in. At United, Roy's an instant hero, winning 2 doubles in his first 3 seasons. But if you thought all that success would calm him down, think again. Roy notches up red cards for fun, including one for a particularly horrendous challenge on Gareth Southgate. He stamps on the future Sir Gareth like he's a worthless cockroach in an Ayia Napa taverna, and when he's done maiming opponents, he turns on his teammates. On a tour of Hong Kong, Roy falls out with goalkeeper Peter Schmeichel. He doesn't like the way Schmeichel bollocks his players during games, and accuses the keeper of playing to the crowd. And when the pair cross paths in the hotel corridor after a night out, things kick off. Schmeichel confronts Roy, screaming, "I've had enough of you!" And Roy headbutts him in the face. He makes contact just as club legend Bobby Charlton staggers out of his room, dressed only in his threadbare undies and vest. A horrified Sir Bobby watches on as the pair are dragged apart, but Keane saves the truly scary stuff for his neighbours. In his explosive behind-the-scenes book, Man United security chief Ned Kelly recalls receiving a phone call in 1997. "Ned, I've just been told that Roy Keane is running up and down the streets of Manchester with a knife and stick in his hands." Turns out a neighbour had complained about Roy's dog and he'd laid siege to her door, threatening her with a kitchen knife. When the club confront him, Roy replies with a roguish smile, "Who, me? Nah." But Roy lays down his weapons to captain United into their greatest season of all time. Spurred on by Keane's godlike performance against Juventus in the Champions League semis, they go on to win a historic treble. There's euphoric scenes at the final whistle, but not from Roy. He missed the final through suspension and calls it my worst experience in football. So, when you've terrorised neighbours, teammates and Sir Kenny Dalglish, where do you go next? You attack the fans, of course. In 2000, Roy lays into the prawn sandwich brigade that attend United home games, saying,
"Some people come to Old Trafford and I don't think they can spell football, never mind understand it."
But amid all that violence, Roy still saves his very worst but one man in particular, Erling Haaland's dad, Alfie. Back in '97, Alfie accused Roy of faking an injury during a fiery encounter between United and his side Leeds, and Roy spends years plotting his revenge. He finally gets his chance in a 2001 Manchester derby when Alfie is playing for City. As Roy later explained, "I'd waited long enough. I fucking hit him hard. The ball was there. Take that, you cunt." Now, because of this, Keane is often blamed for ending Haaland's career, but that is a myth. In fact, Alfie played on and started another game 4 days later. He did have knee surgery that summer, but it was the other knee. Anyway, Roy might be making enemies in the blue half of Manchester, but in Ireland, he's a national hero. In 2002, he inspires them to qualify for the World Cup. It should have been a fairy tale, but instead, the stage was set for Roy Keane's biggest ever meltdown. When Ireland arrive at their training camp on the tiny Pacific island of Saipan, Roy is furious at the conditions. Their training kits haven't arrived, the pitch is bone dry, and there aren't even any footballs. Keane complains in a scathing interview, and it sparks a civil war in the camp. But the final straw comes in a team meeting when manager Mick McCarthy accuses Roy of faking an injury. He flips. "You're a fickin' wanker. I didn't rate you as a player, I don't rate you as a manager, and I don't rate you as a person. You're a fickin' wanker, and you can stick your World Cup up your bollocks." Keane flies home before the opening game, dividing the nation. A TV reporter tracks him down and pleads with Roy to think of Ireland's children, but he refuses to return to Japan. And it's fair to say he holds a grudge against Mick McCarthy. 2 months later, he gives an interview where he explains, "I hope I don't come across as bitter and twisted, but that man can rot in hell for all I care. I don't feel any guilt about saying that because he deserves it. Fuck him, feckin' tosser." And back in Manchester, things aren't much better. Now a dignified and mellow elder statesman, Roy is finding it increasingly hard to bond with his young teammates. While Wayne Rooney and Rio Ferdinand ping each other Usher ringtones on Bluetooth, Roy laments, "I don't get them, their banter or their humour." On one occasion, Roy's watching a rugby league match in the hotel bar when Wazza changes the channel to X Factor and hides the remote. Roy storms off to bed before confronting Wayne at breakfast, snarling, "Go fuck yourself," at the young striker. And in 2005, he burns his bridges for good. When United get thumped 4-1 by Middlesbrough, Keane does an interview with MUTV, slagging off his teammates. "Just because you're paid 120 grand a week and play well for 20 minutes against Tottenham, you think you're a superstar," he says of Rio Ferdinand, before turning his anger on Kieran Richardson, branding him a lazy defender. Finally, he tells a shocked interviewer, "I can't understand why people in Scotland rave about Darren Fletcher." Fergie rips up his contract, and the Man United era is over. So where next for football's angriest man? Keane signs for Celtic, but when he rocks up in Glasgow, he ain't impressed. "When I got on the bus, John Hartson was sitting there and he was eating a packet of crisps with a fizzy drink. I said to myself, welcome to hell." And things get worse when comedian Paddy McConnell taunts Roy on his debut, calling him a fucking Cork gypsy. After the game, Roy gets teammate Neil Lennon to invite Paddy into his car, where he's hiding in the back seat, ready to strangle him. Paddy later explained,
"All I heard was the voice and it was like, who's a fucking Cork gypsy now, you fucking fat cunt?" And all I was like...
After a chaotic 6 months at Celtic, Roy hangs up his boots for good, and footballers everywhere feel their blood run cold as news breaks Roy Keane is going into management. He takes the Sunderland job and actually does well, taking them from the Championship relegation zone to league champions in his first season. Unsurprisingly, he's a bit of a disciplinarian. When 3 players arrive 1 minute late for the team bus, he orders the driver to leave without them, and his half-time team talks are the stuff of legend. In one match, he politely asks his kit man to wheel the tactics board into the dressing room, then takes a running jump and smashes it with a kung fu kick. Another time, he spends the full 15 minutes sitting in total silence with his arms crossed. And when he discovers his squad listened to Dancing Queen by ABBA before games, Roy is stunned. They were going out to play a match. Men versus men. Testosterone levels were high. Gotta hit people at pace. Fucking Dancing Queen. Promotion secured. Roy decides he needs a bit of Premier League experience in his squad, so he calls up Robbie Savage, but he's not impressed with his voicemail. It went, "Hi, it's Robbie. What's up?" I never called him back. I thought, I can't be fucking signing that. Without Robbie's top flight know-how, Sunderland struggle in the Prem. They avoid relegation, but tensions rise between Roy and his players. And things hit rock bottom when he gives a team talk before a game against Aston Villa. "Listen lads, basically, you're shit. Try and enjoy the game. You're probably going to get beat, but just enjoy being shit. In December 2008, he resigns. The players throw wild celebrations. But when Roy becomes assistant manager of Ireland, he decides to try a new approach, opting for a friendly, arm-round-the-shoulder approach to his players. One day, he storms into the treatment room and screams at the injured players. "You're fucking pricks! You're cunts! You don't even care! You don't want to train!" Weirdly, they hate him. In November 2018, he leaves the job by mutual consent. And after a brief stint as Nottingham Forest's assistant, he retires from coaching for good. These days, you can find Roy cozying up on the pundit's sofa. And while he's mellowed a bit, he hasn't lost all his venom. After one poor United performance, he lashes out at Maguire and David De Gea, saying,
"I wouldn't even let him on the bus after the match. I get a taxi back to Manchester."
And when an aging Jordan Henderson is picked for the England squad, Roy hits the roof.
They want him around the place. For what? What does he do? Card tricks? Does he have a sing-song? Does quizzes in the evenings?
And Roy's still clashing with fans. While working for Sky Sports at the Emirates, Roy is headbutted by a fan, leading Micah Richards to storm in and protect him. And at Ipswich, he's abused by a supporter who's still angry about his disastrous stint as manager. So, Roy offers him out. "I'll wait for you in the car park and we can discuss it." Now, I can't promise midfield legends on Manchester knife sprees, but you can find more tales from football's wildest stars on our channel, like the scandalous inside story of Rio Ferdinand's golden years. He flogged fake Versace to teammates, partied with P. Diddy, and starred in sex tapes with Frank Lampard. It's a wild one. Check it out on our channel, and thanks for watching.